Aniruddha Sarkar is now joining us from Quest Investment Advisors. Aniruddha, good afternoon. Happy Diwali to you. Hope you had a cracker of a Diwali. You are a mid-cap stock picker. Are you finding it difficult to look for new ideas in mid-cap, small-cap? And or you think that we should not generalize? There are still ample opportunities in mid-cap, small-cap, which are okay on earnings, visibility and valuations.
Yeah, happy Diwali, Ajay, to you, and a very warm welcome to all your investors. See, I would say that, this whole debate about the valuation is something, in fact, the last 6 months, ever since we crossed the 18,500 levels, people have been talking about, is it India looking expensive, or is there enough room of upside? And at the same time, we saw the mid and small cap catching up. I think what is really attributing this entire outperformance of the mid and small cap is that the earnings growth of many of the good quality mid and small caps is far outperforming the large cap earnings growth. In fact, several companies which we are tracking, in fact, you asked about, is there decent valuation? I would say if I look at the last 12 to 18 months earnings and then look at the valuation, it would not be the right thing. We are looking at where the earnings can look at in the next 18 to 24 months. And that is where I'm getting a lot of comfort in several good quality mid and small cap companies. So I would say that even at these levels of the headline index, investors can definitely pick up some good quality companies at the reasonable the valuations.
Understand what exactly are you doing in that space? I want to understand top 2, 3, or maybe the top 2 positions in the mid cap side. We only talk the business model. We are not talking about whether to buy or sell the stock, just for understanding purpose.
Absolutely. So, in fact, it's very difficult to say that, whether it's a mid cap or, sentimentally, it might, by numbers, it might look like a large cap. But I would say if I look at the domestic consumption space, within the domestic consumption space, I would say organized retail is a very good space where I would say we have a decent allocation. And organized retail, when I'm talking about, this is the whole space wherein you don't have any impact of what is happening outside India. And that is the space I would say the whole domestic consumption is very, very immune to slowdown in Europe, upcoming recession in the US, or the housing sales going down in the US. This is one part, organized retail, where I would say investors can look at good companies at good valuations. Now, when I talk about valuations in that organized retail, you should not compare it to the broader market, because most of the companies there might be quoting at 40, 50 P, but we need to see that where the growth is coming from. And many of these companies, in fact, without naming the company, so one of the organized retail companies we have in our portfolio, it is quoting at pretty high valuations of around 60, 70. But when I look at the last quarter numbers, they had almost 60% earnings growth. Now, if you're getting a 60% earnings growth on a Y-on-Y basis, definitely a company like that commands a high premium in an environment where earnings are not happening. The second space, I would say, within the consumption space, where I would say valuation comfort is there, is in the hotel space, the hotel industry. And that, again, I would say is to do with a lot of the whole organized consumption, and I would say with domestic consumption. That is the space wherein domestic travelers have been, I would say, booking across all seasons. Typically, we used to find an off season, but now I'm sure you also would be seeing that we don't find any off season in the hotel industry. And that is another space where I would say good amount of valuation comfort is there, along with good names which are available.
About it. I also saw a name from the wires and cable side in your portfolio, Polycab, but I'll not talk about the company. I want to talk about the space. So there is 2, 3 parts to it: the urban infrastructure / real estate story, and then there is the wholesale, the ultra high voltage segment, which is seeing massive growth due to government focus and export opportunity. You see wires and cable as a category do well for next 2, 3 years. Do you have that kind of visibility and comfort on that category?
See, I just kind of make a correction. We have booked out of Polycab, but yes, I would say if I look at where the beneficiaries of Polycab will be, it is the real estate space, where again we are very bullish on. And I think if you're talking about the wires and cables industry, the two major areas where they get consumed, one is the industrials, second is the real estate space. And I think in both of these spaces, we are very bullish. So I don't see a reason why most of the wire and cable companies, whether it's the name which you mentioned or any other peers in that space, will continue to show a mid-teens to high-teens, double-digit kind of an earnings growth for the next 18 to 24 months, because we are seeing a lot of activity on the ground, whether in the real estate space or in the industrial capex space. In fact, the private capex is something which is picking up, and I think most of the private capex is being postponed till the election outcome happens. But I think that is going to be a big kind of a boom which will be seen in most of the wires and cables industry.
Fair point. Real estate. Let's talk about real estate. On the one hand, volumes are very good, but what are you getting a sense on volumes in the next 2-3 years? The valuation some of the stocks are trading at least the top ones, if we're to look at the Oberois and DLFs of the world, or even Lodha for that matter, don't you find it slightly stretched anywhere between 50 to 75 times? Or you're comfortable owning some of the real estate names? How are you approaching real estate?
See, the real estate, out of the names which you mentioned, so I would say that for investors to get a comfort with regard to valuation and upside with regard to earnings upside, I think the mid-sized and the smaller sized good players is where they should bet on. And that is where I would say bulk of our allocation is. I agree with you. The valuation for the larger players is definitely a bit out of comfort. But yes, I would say that, they might continue to command a premium, because if you're talking about the large institutional investors and who would want some exposure to the real estate, they can't venture out into the smaller names. So they might continue to remain expensive. But having said that, for any individual investor, I would say looking at the mid-sized real estate players where the valuation comfort is there, I would say that is a space to be in. Also, one needs to be very careful about investing into these mid-sized players, because they are very focused in specific regions. And we need to understand how those specific regions are operating. And that is when, you can make a decent return if your bet on the right market is done there. But I would say valuation wise, the mid-sized real estate players is where we are betting on.
For the more near term to medium term, one of the big monitorables, Aniruddha, is state elections first, and then of course the general elections. I'm not, for a moment saying that it impacts the investing world a lot, because that's more about longer term issues. But in the medium term, it is an issue for the market. So as a observer of the market, I want to know, the narrative right now is that state elections may actually go adverse to BJP, and national election is where they have much higher probability of winning. Is that the narrative right now which the street is pricing in? What if the state election too, there is some incremental gains toward their side? Any thoughts there?
Absolutely. In fact, you just read my mind. Just half an hour back, I was talking to one market expert, and we were just having a discussion with regard to this, that market is broadly factoring in that in the state elections, the BJP will not get a good number, and that would be kind of, a bit kind of on the negative side. But yes, in next year's central government elections, it's almost kind of, a consensus that they are going to come back. Now, market is not factoring in that what if BJP does pretty well in the state elections also. And having said that, with so much of FI selling before the elections, and also considering that November, December, they typically are on the exit mode, we might be looking at a very, very positive surprise in the month of January, once the outcome of all the results happen and when the FIs come back. So I would say in the near term, that's a big kind of an upside risk if the outcome in the state elections goes against what the consensus is built up. On the other side, if it comes in line what the market is expecting, I don't see any kind of a negative reaction to the market, because broadly market has factored in, as you mentioned rightly.
Last question to you is about a very interesting note which Morgan Stanley has put out today, putting a Sensex target of 74,000 for December 24. But I'm just taking that only for reference sake. The points which they are raising, that why you need to be constructive on the market, is that if you keep the volatility which could occur due to election, etc., on the side, more structural factors are much more stronger why you need to be fully invested and why you need to be bullish, which is flows, earnings quality, macros under check, now crude and dollar index as well as US yields again falling. So the argument to be bullish are much more stronger than argument to be nervous. What are your thoughts?
I think, Ajay, if you look at all the different factors, an investor needs to look at before investing into any market, I don't find any convincing factor which makes anyone become negative on a market like India. If you look at all the factors which drives an economy, I'm talking from a slightly medium to long term. I think all the factors are in support of India doing well in the medium to long term. If you talk about economic growth, I think we are the fastest growing economy in the world among all the larger economies. If you talk about our population, I think we are the largest population, and also we have the young working population in the world. And in fact, I'm sure you would be seeing that many of the countries across the globe, they are looking at hiring Indian workers in their country because they are running out of the local talent over there. The third factor is, I would say, the participation of the domestic investors. I think we have been always wanting that the domestic participation in equity should go up because it has always been the low single digits. I think with the type of SIP numbers, I think that gives us confidence that domestic participation is definitely increasing substantially. If you talk about investment into infrastructure building, if you talk about investment into local manufacturing, I think we have all the right ingredients which is going to unfold over the next couple of years. And I don't see any reason for anyone to be negative on India. And one major factor which also I would say puts together all these things is in the country's position and the relation with many international or the big countries. And I think where India's the relation stands today with most of the larger countries in the world or even the smaller countries in the world, I think it has never been this good ever, wherein we are being on the side of all the large countries and the mid-sized and the smaller countries across the globe. So I think India is in a very, very excellent spot with regard to capturing the growth potential for the next couple of years or the next couple of the decades also. Short run, you will get the negatives here and there, but I think those are opportune time for anyone to invest if they are not fully invested.
Right. All right, Aniruddha, we'll let you on that one. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you.